Madam President.
The senator from South Dakota.
Madam President, I also believe profoundly that increasing our exports, improving our trading opportunities for businesses in this country can do a lot to get Americans back to work. It employs a lot of people across this country today, and it's really important that we get these trade agreements done. I couldn't agree more with what my colleague from Oregon had to say about that in terms of its impact on the economy. What's unfortunate, in my view, is the fact that we have had to wait so long to get where we are. We've had trade agreements now that have been teed up, literally signed back in December of 2006 for Colombia, Panama, and South Korea in 2007. And it strikes me, at least, that we've lost a tremendous amount of opportunity and a tremendous amount of market share as a result of the delay. Now, I would have hoped that yesterday we would have passed Trade Promotion Authority, because that allows us at least to be at the table to negotiate trade agreements in the future. We've been locked out, basically, of that since Trade Promotion Authority lapsed back in 2007. And this is a global economy, Madam President, and the world is passing us by. Every single day that we are not engaged, that we're not out there negotiating trade agreements with countries around the world, somebody else is. And every single day, we're losing opportunities for American business to export and to grow our economy and to create jobs here at home. And so what I want to speak to today is an amendment that I filed earlier this afternoon that deals with what I believe is a very important topic, and that is the high cost of delay when it comes to the pending free trade agreements. Now, much attention has been paid in this debate to the pros and cons of trade adjustment assistance, and that's certainly a debate we ought to have. But we should not overlook the fact that there has been a real cost to America's economy and to American business associated with the President's strategy to link passage of the free trade agreements to the renewal of an expanded trade adjustment assistance program. It's very unfortunate, especially considering even what the White House acknowledges, and that is that passing the trade agreements is one of the best things that we can do in the short term to create jobs. According to the Business Roundtable, the passage of the trade agreements will support 250,000 American jobs. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates this figure could be as high as 380,000 U.S. jobs. You would think that passage of these trade agreements, which were signed in 2006 and 2007, would have been a priority, and an early priority, for the Obama administration. Yet here we are, more than 2.5 years into this administration, and the President still has not made a commitment to send us the trade agreements so that we can consider them. Now, I hope that what we're doing today puts in place a process whereby that will happen, but as of right now, we have yet to see those trade agreements, notwithstanding the President's assertions that he's committed to growing trade and to getting these trade agreements passed. That can't happen until they are submitted to the United States Congress for ratification. I'm hopeful that the trade bill that's before us now will allow us to get to a full and fair debate on the trade adjustment assistance, and in so doing, we will finally get to where we have removed what I hope is the last obstacle blocking passage of the 3 free trade agreements. My amendment, Madam President, is very simple. Under the current Trade Promotion Authority procedures, the International Trade Commission must prepare a report that is submitted to Congress no later than 90 days after a trade agreement is signed. However, there is currently no requirement that the ITC conduct a study to assess the negative impact on U.S. businesses when we delay implementation of an agreement, as we have with Korea, Colombia, and Panama. My amendment would simply require that the International Trade Commission assess the negative impact to U.S. businesses if a trade agreement is signed but has not been considered by Congress within 2 years. The ITC study would focus on lost U.S. exports, how the delay has impacted U.S. trade objectives as set forward under TPA, as well as how the delay impacts the protection of U.S. intellectual property overseas. The study would also estimate the impact on U.S. employment if the trade agreement in question continues to languish. Finally, the ITC would be required to update this study in every year subsequent that the trade agreement is not considered by Congress or if it is not entered into force. My amendment follows a basic principle. If the President, I should say, believes a trade agreement is in America's national and economic interest, he needs to submit it to Congress. The 3 pending trade agreements that hopefully will be considered soon are a good case in point. Consider that United States companies have paid more than $5 billion in tariffs to Colombia and Panama since the trade agreements with these nations were signed more than 4 years ago. That's $5 billion that American companies have had to put out in the form of tariffs to these countries because these are trade agreements which were signed more than 4 years ago, haven't entered into force. More importantly, U.S. businesses have lost countless business opportunities in Korea, Colombia, and Panama. Without trade agreements to ensure similar treatment for our exporters, American businesses will continue to face high tariff and non-tariff barriers abroad. Consider just one example, Madam President. The market for agricultural products in Korea, which is the world's 13th largest economy. Korea's tariffs on imported agricultural goods average 54%, compared to an average 9% tariff on these imports into the United States. Passage of the Korea Free Trade Agreement will level this playing field. Yet the administration continues to delay sending these agreements to Congress. At a time of near record unemployment and slow economic growth, this delay is unacceptable. This ongoing delay is having a real impact on American businesses, and it will only get worse. The Colombian market for agricultural products is another good example of the high cost of delay. In 2010, for the first time in the history of U.S.-Colombia trade, the U.S. lost to Argentina its position as Colombia's #1 agricultural supplier. Consider the story of the three main crops that we grow in South Dakota: soybeans, corn, and wheat. The combined market share in Colombia for these three U.S. agricultural exports has decreased from 78% in 2008 to 28% in 2010, a decline of 50 percentage points. We are living in a global economy where America cannot afford to stand still and to stay on the sidelines when it comes to trade. In 1960, exports accounted for only 3.6% of our entire GDP. Today, exports account for 12.5% of our GDP. Exports of U.S. goods and services support over 10 million American jobs. It is long past the time, Madam President, that we get back in the game by passing the three pending trade agreements and then to work aggressively to make sure that our administration is in a position with Trade Promotion Authority to negotiate new agreements that will open up new market opportunities for American business. America's manufacturers, America's farmers, America's service providers cannot afford to wait any longer. And so what this amendment does, Madam President, very simply, is requires us to weigh and to evaluate and to analyze the impact of delay when it comes to implementing these free trade agreements. We have seen in these examples of Colombia and Panama and South Korea with great clarity the impact, the economic impact, the loss of market share that has occurred to many of our exporters as a result of this delay. And it's important that we know, that American business know, that the American people know what we're losing when we delay these agreements, as has happened here with these three particular agreements. So it's a straightforward amendment, Madam President, and I raise it to raise what I think is an important issue, and that is that when we get signed agreements, we need to take action on those. They need to be submitted, ratified, and acted on by the United States Congress, or we are going to continue to lose out to critical, important opportunities for American exporters. Madam President, I yield the floor.